So Augustine gets into this. He tries to argue that the skeptics who will admit that either we know or we don't know, and knowing that either they know or they don't know, even though they can't make up their mind which is, know in that the truth of the law of non-contradiction. Either A or not A. So he tries to find logical truths which even the skeptic has to admit. And that's one of the standard responses to skepticism. The other response, that perhaps is most traditional, is to try and find that evasive first premise. Where the Platonists go at it with dialectic, the Aristotelians go at it with their attempt to abstract universal first principles from their experience of an entire species. And that's the way it went on through the Middle Ages. And when the Platonic and Aristotelian views were called into question in the Renaissance, Descartes, what did he do? Well, he tried to find the first premise the way mathematics tries to find the first premise, axioms on which mathematical systems are built. Self-evident truths, intuitive. So the development in epistemology of what we call today, what we call foundationalism, that we usually trace back to Descartes, was in Descartes a response to the skepticism of his time. But that only because the skepticism of an earlier time had triggered approaches to first premises of a Platonic and Aristotelian sort. Get the picture? And the thing that's been happening in epistemology increasingly since Kant, and much more increasingly in the last half century, second half of 20th century, is a rejection of foundationalism, along with a rejection of skepticism, and the defining of some sort of a third position, a sort of fallibilist position, that speaks of knowledge as justified true belief, in some way, rather than looking for a knowledge of complete certainty, rejecting the hard division of Plato's divided line, and eliding the complete gap between knowledge and belief, so that knowledge becomes a certain subset of believing beliefs. Well, so much then for Greek and Roman skepticism. Any comments, queries, further things? Yeah, Bob.
How does how does he say that people believe in belief? How can one believe in belief if you allow fallible? In other words, if you believe something, you really believe it.
Do you? No, you see, they're not using belief in your religious sense of a total commitment. You see, that's a different sense of belief. Distinguish the sense of belief in epistemology from the sense of belief in talking of religious trust or interpersonal trust. You see?
More like opinion.
Yeah, more like opinion. Yeah, so the interpersonal kind of belief. When I talk about believing in my wife, I mean I trust her to be the sort of person I've come to believe she is. I believe in her. When we say in the Apostles' Creed, I believe in God the Father Almighty, maker of heaven and earth. Archbishop of Canterbury back in the 40s, William Temple, said when we confess the creed, we don't say, I give assent to this, that it is my opinion. That's not what we mean at all. What we mean is, I commit myself to living on this basis. Now, on the other hand, belief in Plato's sense is having an opinion you take to be true, which may well be true, might not be. You can't prove it. So it's in that sense of belief, then, we're talking of belief without certainty. It's epistemic, being prepared to affirm something, having reasons for affirming it, some supporting evidence, perhaps, but short of the kind of demonstrable certainty which you would want in a mathematical proof or something like that. Yeah, Jess. Yeah, I think the complete skeptic would be careful about saying, we cannot know. That sounds too dogmatic. He's closer to saying, we do not know, and we do not know how to find out, but we'll keep looking. You see, we do not know. Now, do we know that we do not know? No, we don't even know that for sure. That's why we're still looking. You get it? In other words, every time you try to pin someone like Pyrrho down and say, here's something you know, they'll say, no, I don't know it. That's just the way I feel about it at this juncture. That's an opinion, if you like. You see, having that distinction between knowledge and opinion is an easy escape mechanism for the skeptic. Oh, yes, that's right. Yeah, he will admit that. But if I don't think I know, it could perhaps possibly be that I do know, but I don't know that I do know, well, I'm still a skeptic. I don't know. The appeal of it. Well, one, the logical appeal is the problem of finding how you can know for sure. 5 kinds of argument against knowing for sure. That's the logical appeal. The psychological appeal, I think, is in avoiding the bewildered confusion of holding to a particular sectarian view with dogmatism in a world where there are 101 other views booming in on you, and the advocates of those views are saying, Jesse, how can you say what you say when? Oh, come on, give me some peace of mind. You see, it's much easier in the middle of an argument, when you've got your back against the wall, to say, I don't know. Much easier. Well, that's an oversimplification, but I think that's the psychological appeal. Yeah. Notice this, that the 200 years of pre-Socratic arguments, in which nobody seemed to agree with anybody else, led to the skepticism of the sophists about the whole business. The development of Greek philosophical systems, Democritan materialism, Platonism, Aristotelianism, Stoicism, Epicureanism is a kind of Democritan materialism. You see, likewise led to an attitude, now, how am I going to know what's right if these guys don't know? skepticism. Any of you ever tempted like that when philosophy comes at you like a cafeteria line? Take your pick of 101 possible answers to 53 different questions, and you want to throw up your hands and back away and say, why should I bother myself? And that's the psychological appeal of skepticism, which is one reason why I try not to teach history or philosophy like a cafeteria line. I try to show that there is some process going on, and we'll say more about that later on. But you see, as a theist, believing in divine providence in history, it would be grossly inconsistent for me to think of the history of philosophy as having no point to it, no direction to it, no outcome at all that makes any sense. Get the point? If you have a Christian philosophy of history, you need to have a Christian philosophy of the history of philosophy. Right? Well, having said that, maybe I should go one step further and let you in a few things further. Basically, it seems to me that the history of ideas is like the story of the wheat and the tares. They grow up together. They grow up together, they get intermingled. If you try pulling too many weeds out, you pull out the wheat. Now, I think that's the basic analogy, if you like. What I'm saying is this, that there are perhaps three possible views of the overall shape of the history of ideas. One is a view that I saw and heard Francis Schaeffer develop one time, I guess not here at Wheaton, but at a nearby institution, where he went something like this. Here's Plato developing his system. Along comes Aristotle, says he's wrong, this is what's right. Along come the Stoics, that's wrong, this is what's right. Along come the Epicureans, that's wrong, this is what's right. That's the whole history of philosophy, a series of mistakes. I think that's a misreading. They don't see the interrelationships at all. They don't see what's in common, what is preserved, and what is lost. You see, that's an atomistic reading of the history of philosophy. I think it's very misleading. It's a pessimistic view. And frankly, I don't have that pessimistic view of God's providence in history and in the history of the human intellect. Now, there's an overly optimistic view of history that sees everything emerging in one direction, a unilinear evolution, until the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth emerges. And that's the sort of optimism that you get in 19th century Hegel, who saw his philosophy as the philosophy to end all philosophies, so that all subsequent philosophy would just be a series of footnotes to Hegel. And I think that's far too optimistic a view of history and of human intellect. Now, in between, and this is the wheat and the tares business, in between is what I call a picture of multilinear development. That is to say, a plurality of philosophical trends in parallel with each other. And you can cut the cake various ways, but let's say what we have is some kinds of idealism, metaphysical idealism, some kinds of materialism or naturalism, and some kinds of theism. If you like, three different worldview traditions. And each of these is itself a pluralistic tradition. Give it a little more time along here. Each of these is a pluralistic tradition. So that in the course of history, you get a lot of different kinds of idealism, different kinds of philosophical naturalism, different kinds of theism. At any one time, you might, there are at least three major theistic religions, after all, in the Middle Ages. And today, Islam, Judaism, Christianity. Not to mention theological subdivisions of each of those. So you might get all sorts of diversities. Now, in each case, what you have is philosophy being done from this kind of overall perspective, in the light of that overall vision of things. And the input that helps to affect things in the course of history is the input of things like the history of science, where you have a succession of scientific models. Model 1, Model 2, and Model 3. Model 1, Greek science, Pythagorean, Aristotelian, emphasis on form and matter. Familiar? You see, and that scientific model is, in science, eclipsed in the scientific revolution of the Renaissance, and you get a mechanistic model, number 2, which gradually is phased out in the 19th century with more organic interrelational models, field theory and so forth, process models. So each of these, you see, provides an understanding of nature which is filtered into these worldview traditions. The result is that you get idealism in the Greek context, you get idealism working with a mechanistic model in the Enlightenment, you get idealism in the 19th century with a more evolutionary model, so forth. And similarly in these other traditions, multilinear development. And because of the common inputs with methodologies that come with changing scientific models, there's a lot of common philosophical issues, you see, that keep these traditions in dialogue and interaction with each other, often making common cause, agreeing on certain things, often not. Okay. So my picture of the history of philosophy is much more complex than the this is wrong, this is right, you see, and much more complex than the evolutionary thing of the 19th century. The wheat and the tares growing together. Multilinear development. I've asked you to read for next week that chapter 2 in Gilson's book, The Spirit of Medieval Philosophy, which bears on this in a way. Because Gilson's book was the Gifford Lectures that he gave in the 1930s in Scotland. The Gifford Lectures are supposedly the most distinguished lectures on religious thought that there is. He gave a series of lectures on medieval philosophy. And before it came out, there burst on the scene in Europe a debate over the question, is there a Christian philosophy? A debate triggered by a French philosopher, Émile Breguier, who in the French journal, the Revue de Métaphysique et de Morale, had published an article in which he argued, in effect, if it's philosophy, it's not Christian, because philosophy is neutral and Christian is committed. And if it's Christian, it's not philosophy. Breguier was a rationalist, foundationalist, who thought everything could be proven. And that spurred all sorts of responses. responses that have, in a way, gone on to the present day. But Gilson had just done the Gifford Lectures and was getting them ready for publication, so he added a couple of chapters at the beginning. I'm asking you to read one of those chapters. In which he said, is there a Christian philosophy? Sure. Lots of them. Look at the Middle Ages. In effect, he's saying that Christian philosophy that is done with Christian intention, a Christian sense of direction. What I call Christian perspective. That's all. Yeah. Philosophy conference this month, end of the month, is on the contributions of medieval philosophy to 20th century philosophical issues. You see, contributions, that is to say, of Christian philosophy in the Middle Ages. Promises to be good.
On the three different philosophical
Yeah, pardon me.
bases there, are you saying that God has allowed those three to develop
Sure.
throughout history?
Yeah.
What do you think?
It wouldn't be there if you hadn't.
What do you think he's going to kind of push those into one?
Well, you're asking about my eschatology. I'm a premillennialist. I don't think he's going to push them into one. There may be some wheat in idealism as well as tares. He'll sort it out. But meantime, in harvesting what we have to harvest, we can do some sorting. I don't want to make fun of your question, but seriously, the theology affects your philosophy of history. If you ask me how's it going to come out in the end, I have to talk about eschatology. See, I see the millennium as an age of philosophical flourishing. The Christian thought is it's never flourished before.
But it would seem like there's two different philosophies that have a very different,
Yeah. Well, yes and no. Yes and no. How many of you are familiar with, this is tangential, but I think it's important. How many of you are familiar with Nicholas Walterstorff's little book on reason within the bounds of religion? None of you? Shame on you. Okay, it's in the bookstore, it's in the library, you can read it in an hour. Do it. Nicholas Walterstorff, Reason Within the Bounds of Religion. Okay, the title for the book is a parody on Kant's book, Religion Within the Bounds of Reason. Walterstorff, Reason Within the Bounds of Religion. Okay, inverted. Now, what Walterstorff does is to talk about the formation and criticism of theories in any discipline. Theory formation, theory criticism. And points out that a theory is accountable in two regards. It's accountable to what we call data, which it explains, and it's accountable to other theories, other beliefs, which he calls control beliefs. Control, because they exercise some control over the kind of theory on another subject, which we would come up with. You don't come up with a theory which contradicts your other beliefs. So theories work in that way. Theories aren't just empirical generalizations, they're part of a whole network of concepts and understandings. Okay. Now, his point is that you might think of three different sets of control beliefs in relationship to three alternative theories. Okay? And it might be that with the first set of control beliefs, theory 1, theory 2 might each be perfectly compatible. Interestingly, theory 2 might also be compatible with CB2, even though theory 3 is compatible with CB2, but not with CB1. Moreover, T1 might be compatible with CB3, along with T3. So you might find yourself, if you are working with CB1, among the control beliefs, your Christian control beliefs, you might find yourself holding to a theory, considering a theory, which might be considered by somebody with a very different perspective. Sure. Why should that be a problem? The fact is that Christians do agree with other people on some theoretical matters, do often make common cause even on ethical issues. So the relationship between what he calls control belief, what I call perspective, the relationship between the control belief and the theory is not one of strict implication, so that T1 and only T1 and nothing else can possibly be consistent with CB1. No. No. A variety of possibilities. Now, if that's the case, then from the standpoint of CB1, there is some wheat that we might glean from in CB3. Learn from beyond. Which is why the guy who first talked about all truth is God's truth back among the church fathers said that the task of the Christian is to regather the fragments of truth wherever they're found, and to reunite them to the body of the whole from which they've been taken. You can find them in all sorts of places. Just because Plato said it doesn't make it wrong, does it? Just because Aristotle wasn't a Christian doesn't make everything he said false, does it? Obviously not. Now, think of the providence of God in history in relationship to the whole notion of common grace, and the goodness of God that makes the sun to shine on the just